Sarah Kate, they had to cut us off, didn't they?
They did.
They had to cut us off. Welcome, everyone, to the first in our 2023 LinkedIn Live series. And uh, I couldn't be more excited to have my uh, guest, Sarah Kate Ellis, who is the president and CEO of GLAAD. And Sarah and I were just talking about inclusivity in a lot of different ways. We were talking about our children at this point and conformity and so forth. But as we are looking at corporate inclusivity and what does it actually mean, Sarah Kate, I realize in the front part of our conversation, it's not just corporate inclusivity, it's inclusivity across the board. And as we are raising people to be in the corporate world and to be in the world in general, the importance of recognizing inclusivity right now, which makes our corporations and our world a lot better. So welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of you and the work that your company does. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
You know what? People say that sometimes, and I know you actually mean it because before I even knew you, I sat in your panel at the last year's Most Powerful Women's Conference, and you were up front with my friend Carrie Kennedy, who I'm sure we both just adore. And I think I was typing to Tara and the team. I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? She is like amazing. So I'm very happy because I'm a fan of yours too. And my friend and colleague Justin Blake is on your board, I believe, as well.
That's correct. And I
Yeah.
think you were typing and that you liked me so much because I was actually referencing your research. And I think that's why you liked me so much.
That might have been part of
mentioned the Trust Edelman research, which I do very, very often.
Yeah. That was one of the reasons, but you were incredibly compelling. And you told me in the green room that you don't like softball. So I'm going to start with the first hard question I have for you. Just as I want to get to know you a little better, I want our audience to know you a little better. And when you talk about GLAAD's mission, it says, let's see. In short order, Ellis refocused GLAAD's crucial advocacy to accelerate acceptance of the LGBTQ community through a variety of compelling and effective initiatives, campaigns, and programs. I struggle with the word acceptance because I don't need to be accepted anywhere. I think inclusivity and belonging are important. So for you, what is the difference? But is there a difference between accelerating acceptance and inclusivity and belonging?
Yeah, I think, so when I first started, we were using the word tolerance, which is even worse.
Right.
I think, for me, it's about safety. Honestly, it's about where do we exist as marginalized folks in a society and we're safe and where our lives aren't being threatened, our well-being isn't being threatened, and we have a seat at the table to ensure change. So I could see it moving to inclusivity. For me, acceptance meant belonging.
Yes.
And so that is, but words are really important. And I've gotten people who love acceptance and people who have a visceral reaction to acceptance. I think part of that is because it means somebody else is determining whether or not
Yes.
You belong. And that's not how I see it, but I do understand that can be how it's seen.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I had a sense of that, but I do think words matter. And I think that increasingly we have to take control of our narratives and we have to force conversations that make sense and that others are not dominant and we are secondary. And so I appreciate that. Now, you personally have had a remarkable journalism journey, but you've turned your emphasis and your positions in journalism to advocacy. Talk about what that journey looked like and why.
So I was actually mostly on the business side, or always on the business side, but the marketing business side at both Time Inc. and Condé Nast over the year, over 2 decades, where I worked at magazines and digital properties. And I was also, back in the day, the co-chair of the Time Inc. Out organization, which was an instrument for advocacy. That is the instrument that was used to get domestic partnerships recognized, or same-sex health benefits and that type of thing. That was actually before my time, but we continue to be advocates, and also create places and spaces for LGBTQ folks, in the company. I think that was what led me to where I am at GLAAD today.
When you think about your success at GLAAD, when you think about your legacy, what are the three things that you want to say, you know, I was here, and as a result of me being here, this is how the world is different and better?
I think one of the things that we've done is move our relationships with corporates, from a place of watchdog to partnership. So that was through the GLAAD Media Institute that we built several years ago. We started in 2018, and it's still growing, and that's where we have a lot of these partnerships. I think the report that we do on measuring the culture of America and understanding how safe it is for us in this country, and then in the greater world, is really important. And I think one of the other big things is probably, I mean, the Hollywood stuff, all of that stuff has been amazing and really, really great.
Effective.
But probably bringing us, I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, but bringing the organization and really the movement to the World Economic Forum in Davos, and creating those conversations where they were void before, and really focusing in on some big conversations that affect our community globally.
All right, so let's stay with that, because your presence at Davos was amazing. I actually happened to be in our New York office and looking over a colleague's shoulder and saw you on a panel. And it was just like the first time that there was a presence there that was so formidable and so important. And it was also, it felt awkward to me, like, oh my God, are we just doing this now at WEF? This is crazy. So what were the conversations with the business community? What surprised you? What encouraged you, et cetera? But tell me all about it.
So I think that if I were reporting back from Davos, my biggest headline would be that we have a polarized world that we're living in, and corporates are feeling that pressure. And I think one of the greatest hopes is the next generation, because they're applying the pressure for inclusivity and for us evolving as a society and a culture. Because I think if left to their own devices, most people would just, be very quiet and live on, don't make eye contact and kind of stay in their lane, if you will. And that's no longer acceptable or allowed. And so I'm very encouraged by that. I think that we turned the promenade, which is sort of the main street in Davos, rainbow one night. With corporate partners, there was 15 corporations that went rainbow with us. And it was a partnership with Accenture and this other project out of WEF called PGLE. And that was pretty breathtaking to see that. And what I think was more breathtaking was to see, Microsoft lit up in rainbow next to the Saudi house, which is where real change needs to happen.
Right.
And I think change to me happens in these small steps, and all of a sudden something takes hold. And so this was a big step, I think, seeing that promenade lit up and the messages that it sent out. And there was this one person that showed up. We had a handful, as you said, of LGBTQ events, and this individual didn't show up to any of them, but took somebody aside and is from an Arab country and said that they do worry that they will get killed if they are seen at any of these events. So for their safety, but they won't show up. But they did say to this person who had been at these events that they were so inspired by seeing us gathered and knowing that we are fighting so that they can live in a free world. And that was really moving to me. That's why we're doing this.
You know, we often talk about the work that we do, and I say that it's not, it's not brain surgery, but it can be life-saving. And literally, I've asked you 4 questions, and in each one, you've talked about safety. You've talked about the importance of safety. And I think it's something that so many of us take for granted. But then so many of us live every day worried about safety. And you almost can't underestimate what that actually means because a lot of people take it for granted. So talk more about safety, but also talk about how everything got lit up, because that just didn't happen overnight. So what were the conversations that were behind that? What were the challenges that you faced in order to make sure that this presence was felt in such a significant way as you're describing?
Yeah, it was a long lead up to that, and it was actually a brainchild out of a friend or a coworker, a peer over at Accenture, who thought of this and thought, "Let's light up the street." His name is Beck, and I think, but it really started 5 years ago when we
Okay.
showed up at the World Economic Forum, and we had to make some noise to
Mhm.
get included. And actually, WEF doesn't like a lot of noise because they don't want controversy. And so we had to build relationships too with the World Economic Forum. And now they have a really amazing diversity and inclusion arm to the World Economic Forum, but that didn't exist really before.
Mhm.
So I really see some evolution and change happening there. I think in terms of safety, safety means different things to different people. When I think about safety, I think about it in relation to marginalized folks who across the board, and I mean this intersectionally, not just
Yeah.
LGBTQ folks, but that that's how, we've done some studies. I think it's, I dread throwing out a number there. Somebody will keep me honest, but it's almost, if it's not 70% of transgender and gender nonconforming folks don't feel safe in their own neighborhood in the United States. That's a lot of people that don't feel safe in their own neighborhood. Um, and then it's still criminal in 67 countries to be LGBTQ and punishable by death in a handful of those. So safety means really living free and living without fear. And I
Mhm.
think fear is used as a mechanism to keep us oppressed and
Yes.
marginalized.
Yes.
Um, it's really important that we build a community and a world where people feel safe, because the psychological um, toll of fear and not being safe, it doesn't allow you to go to work. It doesn't allow you to produce at work. It doesn't allow you to have a family. It doesn't allow you to be present for whoever you are, friends or family, chosen family. And so it really is such a major hurdle in existing in the world.
You also talked about when you live like that, sort of the physicality of your head is down. Like
Mhm,
you don't look people in the eye because you're afraid.
mhm.
And you're afraid of being persecuted. You're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of being oppressed. And so, just the physical nature that takes and the toll that it takes, obviously, the psychological that it takes when you live a life like that. All right. So, but we're doing things to change and to make it better. One of the things that I am most proud of in my tenure at Edelman is this research that we did together.
Mm.
And so, for those who haven't seen it, I'm going to share. Oh, here it is. I'm going to share the findings from that research, and then I'm going to ask your reaction to it.
Okay.
So, Edelman and GLAAD recently partnered together on research about businesses' role addressing LGBTQ plus issues, and these were some of the key findings. One, 59% of Americans say that if business dedicated significant resources to protecting LGBTQ plus rights, it could have a major impact. 59%. Two, 53% expect CEOs to inform and shape policy debates about LGBTQ plus rights. Three, US employees say they are 4.5 times more likely to work at a company if it publicly supports and demonstrates a commitment to expanding and protecting LGBTQ plus rights. The sentiment is strongest among communities of color, most notably Black and Asian employees who perhaps view the fight for LGBTQ plus equality as a signal of commitment to broader inclusion concerns. You talked about intersectionality earlier. And then the last one, Americans are 2 times more likely to buy or use brands that demonstrate a public commitment to LGBTQ plus rights. What encouraged you the most from the research, and what worried you the most?
I think that what I found most amazing about this research is if you really think about it, it's actually common sense.
Yeah.
If you're going to treat people who, especially those who are treated like second-class citizens, or those who are pushed out of the main, circles and rooms, well, then that will reflect really well on your company. And people will take notice of that, because if you're going to treat people well, and not just the people in power, actually the people out of power well, then you must be a good company. So for me, it was really a light bulb moment, in that this is common sense, and companies need to start seeing it as common sense, because it will have a more profound effect. I think that seeing those numbers of people who want CEOs to speak out is really powerful, because and I think that to me is where your other trust barometer sort of comes into play in all of that, right? Because as you all report, that employees trust their CEOs and leadership of their companies more than they trust the government, more than they trust the media. And so as they have this outsized responsibility and ability to have a profound impact on the culture and the world at large, I think it's, especially in this time of where we're seeing such division, it's an opportunity for real leaders to emerge.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me, I agree with everything you said, when we were on your panel in California, we were having a similar conversation, and someone asked the question of, while the role of CEOs is so incredibly important, and they are trend setting, and they are the most trusted in all of these conversations, there is also a move on the other side that a lot of CEOs are saying enough. There's research that contradicts ours, that says, CEOs are like, enough, it's too, it's woke washing. I don't want to keep being so politically correct. And my response to that during that session was, many CEOs don't look like you and I. They don't live like you and I. Many CEOs are, the majority are, and I have nothing against this cohort that I'm about to describe. I'm married to one, but they are straight white men who are over 50 years old. But the people that make these companies run, who buy goods and services, are people that look more like us. And so there, I think, is this tension between leadership, to your point, and then the rest of the world. And so if you disagree, tell me why. And if you wholeheartedly agree, tell me why.
I also think I'll add to it, actually,
Okay.
which is because I get this question now often with, there's some economic concerns going on in the culture right now. I do think it's a reset. I mean, if you look at who's being laid off, more were hired over the past 2 years and are being laid off right now. So that's a whole other live with Lisa. But if you look at what companies will do right now, which is hide behind that.
Right.
And say, we can't dedicate this time, because that's a good to have, not a have to have. And what I say is, if you don't have that now, if you don't invest in that now, when we come out of this slowdown, you will be further behind. Those
Exactly.
companies who invest now in DEI and who really take it seriously will be way far ahead because they'll have the consumers and they'll have the top talent with them.
Yes.
This plays into the talent wars that everybody's talking about, and I'm sure you all talk
Yeah.
a lot about that to your clients. That when they're evaluating, when new employees, when this next generation of talent and innovators are judging your companies, they are looking at what their inclusion is because they want to be in an environment that builds and creates. And you need diversity and inclusion for that to happen.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I want to push it a little bit further, because you talked about it's common sense, it's good business sense, and so to a degree, we should continue to applaud and highlight, but at the same time, like, it's good business, and so and also I have this point of view: you shouldn't get credit for doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you don't get an applause for, like, yay, you did the right thing. Of course you did the right thing. That's your job, to do the right thing. But talk about, in the time that we have left, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our community within Edelman, the LGBTQ plus community, our ERG, and because it is good corporate policy, something that we launched this past year called Out Front. And it's informed by our community. It's informed by some of the best minds in the world. But it's a task force that provides intersectional, interdisciplinary counsel to clients. And so for us, it's good business sense for us to be able to do these things. And then similarly, we have to live our values. And so we also do a lot of really wonderful pro bono work. One I'm particularly proud of is our work with NCLR, that our fabulous Lauren Gray introduced me to and got us going. So in the time we have left, what is your counsel to the folks who are listening from a business perspective? Like, how do you advance this within your organization to ensure that your colleagues feel belonged and they feel included and they feel seen? But also, how do you leverage this as a business initiative?
Great. So I have a few minutes. I also am gonna just pull back for a second because I think it's really important that companies and employees understand the environment that LGBTQ folks are existing in right now. We are 24 days into the new year and the new legislative session, and we've seen over 100 anti-LGBTQ bills proposed already. Last year, we saw about 300 proposed at this is at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
We're expecting that to grow. So what we've seen is about a 20 to 30% increase year over year on these anti-LGBTQ bills. Whether or not they pass, as soon as they're proposed, the damage is done because people are told that they don't matter, they don't exist, that they shouldn't exist as who they are. They're not sane, they're not healthy. It's just unbelievable. A lot of these are targeting trans youth in schools, on the playing field. This is a community that is so marginalized already, and now through politics is being picked on even further. The CDC reported last year that 1 in 4 LGBTQ youth attempted suicide. So that's not contemplated it. That's actually attempted it. And then you're seeing we released a report back in December that said that it was over 100 drag events had been attacked, or LGBTQ events, the majority being drag events, had been physically attacked over the past year. These events have been going on forever, and there's never been, all of a sudden the Proud Boys showing up,
Right.
machine guns, while these drag queens are reading to kids.
Right.
And so we're living in a society as a community where we're under attack in a way that we haven't seen in a really, really long time. And there are really nasty negative narratives around us. And so what we're in the market for is allies. And
Yes.
corporates can be really powerful allies. And that happens in many different ways. But ally is an active word. It's not an adjective. It's a verb, or it needs to be a verb. And that means to speak up for us in rooms that we're not in, or when we leave the room and something is said, to counter that and inform and educate in safe ways, I mean. Um, and I think that one of the ways that companies can be allies also is by using their platforms
Yes.
to help spread the word, if you will. And one of those ways is like you're doing through your practice of helping people understand what DE&I is, why it's so important. Because that work actually does save lives. That
Yes.
creates spaces in companies that people feel really safe in. Um, and so I think that there is a whole host of things that companies can do. The one thing I will warn around is Pride Month, June. So it's so great to participate in June. And coming from a person who, when I started working, no companies participated in Pride Month, to now being able to see all of these companies participating in Pride Month. The thing is that it's not just a month, and this is for any marginalized community.
Yes.
It's 365 days a year.
Yep.
So it's 12 months, not 1 month. And so what are you doing beyond that? So you can't just market to our community. You have to join our movement and help us along the way. And so I think that's a really important thing for companies to keep in mind as they're planning how to participate and work with LGBTQ folks. And I always say, bring us in, bring civil society, bring non-for-profits, not-for-profits, NGOs into the conversation. We'd really love to have the conversation with you so that we can help you do it. Because if you do it well, it benefits us. If you do it poorly, it hurts us,
Yeah.
and it hurts you. So it's a win-win on both and a lose-lose on both.
I need to co-sign in the most significant way every single thing you just said. Every single thing you just said. One, on allyship, I've had this conversation with my colleague Emily, who's been a wonderful educator to me in terms of really driving like many, many, many of the community within Edelman. But you have to earn allyship. I decide whether you're an ally. You don't sign up and say, I'm an ally. I decide whether you deserve to be an ally or not. So I love this concept of allyship. I love, my God, everybody who knows me, it enrages me. Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride Month. I remember the first time I did something for Pride Month, I almost didn't do it because I was like, but what about the rest of the year?
Mm-hmm.
And when we segregate it to that 1 month, we segregate the contribution and the importance of that community to 1 month. So they make me crazy. And then the last point, hopefully everybody on here now knows how to get in touch with you, knows how to get in touch with your organization, and knows how to walk away from this conversation with really, really great preparation for the year ahead. We are, I'm not exaggerating, we are at war. And we have to defend, we have to protect, and we have to advance, and we have to accelerate so that everybody has a seat at the table to advance the things that we care most about and make money while we're doing it. So thank God GLAAD has you. I am so happy to have had this conversation, and we will do another, what did you call it, a live with Lisa? We'll do another live with Lisa on a series of other topics, including raising children in today's day and age. I'll give you the last word, though.
Well, I would love to do a live with Lisa on affirmative action, because I think that is something that's really big, that's coming down the pike, that we don't have our eyes on. And it's coming, the decision's going to come through the Supreme Court, and it's going to hit businesses too. So that's a conversation that I think we need to be having. I would say thank you for your allyship and for having me here today. I love partnering with Edelman. It has been, as I said, every panel I'm on, I talk about the trust barometer. Now I have my own with Edelman to talk about. So I'm very excited about that. But thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day, the week.
Yeah. Thank you for your partnership. Lots of great things to do together.
Definitely.